Okay, so I know this is not ideal, but video capture software is expensive, so I'm trying to do it a different way. What I'm working on here is one panel of a larger page. You can see what I have here would be considered tight roughs or rough pencils. And when I start with the script, I end up doing the whole page looking something like this. And if I need reference, I'll pull it. Now in this case, I have two characters and the dog in front of a house. So I've already drawn the house and all these characters and the dog, so it has to be consistent with everything else I've done. So this was just sort of for placement. And then what I'll do is I'll go in, make a new layer, and I like to sketch with 50% opacity using like a 13 hard brush. And I won't worry about getting the characters right, but I'm thinking like, okay, that's roughly the horizon line, so I'm kind of, let me check proportion a little bit and get the pose a little bit tighter. And so like this guy, maybe he's got his pocket, hand in his pocket. I want to see the bottom of the shirt line because it's above the horizon, and the leg and the knee and all that stuff. But I'm kind of just redrawing another rough that I've already drawn. Again, worrying about the pose, accuracy, placement, perspective, that kind of stuff. And if it looks janky, but I'll come back to that later. And then he's waving through, he's like, "Yo, what's up, brother? I see you got a dog there." And then put in one of these cross-faced lines, sort of, he's looking down and to the left at his pal. He's got a backpack. And then I'll go ahead and do that with the rest of it as well. So you can see I did the other kid and the dog. And then I see there's a rough for a mailbox right here, but I kind of don't remember where I placed the mailbox. So I go back to the full page view. This over and look at panel 1. Oh, the mailbox was on the right hand side. Let's see if you can see that. Here. So this action is taking place about in this area. So the mailbox probably won't even be in the scene, but if it is, it'll be to the right. So then I'll go back in, look at the rough. You can see on the rough I have the mailbox placed wrong. What I'll do is I'll actually go into the rough layer, cut that right out, move it over here. Yeah, probably just going to delete that. Okay, so that's gone. But now that I've gotten rid of that, the composition's not quite how I wanted because I wanted these guys to be over a little more. So now I'll go back into the, in here. Cut out the red rough underneath layer is what I'm doing. And then I'll move that whole thing over about that much. And actually, you know what? Why am I doing that? This is an example of work that adds time for no reason. I'm just going to delete that because I have this new layer of new roughs. So this layer of rough now is just an indication of where the background will go. Go back to this area, leave him where he is, move Joey and his dog over here, boop, 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 boop. And that's probably the best thing about digital, is other than being able to color easy, it's the manipulation of things like that you would used to have to use a light box or copy or erase completely. So I'm not quite into the second rough phase. This guy's proportions look weird, so I'm going to go ahead and mess around with that. What I think I'm going to do is, first of all, get him in his own layer. End up with a lot of layers. Also a lot of save versions. And then I'm going to say, I do this a lot too, which takes forever. And I guess the hope is that I'll do enough drawing that I will have to do less and less roughs and corrections. But I had the rough, I kind of did a second rough, but he seems weird in proportion and stuff, so then I go and kind of do a little bit more detailed construction, although it still doesn't look anything like this particular character. Let me mute those guys. Alright, so he's got a shoe. Doesn't look much different. I do that a lot of times too. I'll redraw it and I'll either find out, oh, I guess it looks fine, or I'll redraw it making the same mistakes. And I guess the hope is that eventually I stop making those mistakes, or I make incremental improvements, and at some point just decide, well, you know, it's not worth redrawing it a 10th time to get another bit of improvement. Although it usually takes me way too long to get to the point where I realize I should stop redrawing it. Again, my hope is that I'll get to the point where I won't need to keep redrawing it so much, or at least I won't feel like I do. But I saw somebody say or post recently something along the lines of done is better than perfect, and that's something I'm trying to really take to heart, because it's hard for me to motivate myself, but I'm not exactly lazy. Like, I work on stuff a lot and feel like nothing gets done because I rework it and redo it and spend way longer than I need to, and I do see improvement. So it's if there was no improvement, I could say, well, I'm wasting my time, but it's diminishing returns. It's very diminishing returns. After the, like I said, second, third, fourth time I redraw something, maybe the first time it gets 20% better, and then the second time it gets, you know, another 10% better, and then it's like 1%, 0.5%, but I'm still spending, you know, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever, redrawing it each time. So at some point I just have to go, well, look, that's where my skill level is, and I either have to study more or just do it. And if I continually study, I mean, that's a good thing, and I do study from time to time, but if all I do is study, I'll work on becoming the perfect artist and never produce anything. I oftentimes think, I don't know if other artists have this problem, but one of my biggest problems is that my ability to see errors far exceeds my ability to draw. And I know a lot of artists are dissatisfied with their work, but what I mean is, at some point in my development as an artist, and as that sounds so friggin' pretentious, but I just mean my skill set, not like my vision quest or something. Between that and getting older and wiser and seeing more art and stuff, I got better and better at understanding certain concepts and seeing flaws. And while I used to do work that was terrible in high school, let's say, I was happy with it and like legit thought, oh, I'm gonna get work doing comics, or, you know, I and not in an arrogant like sort of way, but just I would look at my work and think it was as good as you know, professional work, and I deserved to have work. And now, you know, I'm a million times better than I was back then, but I know I'm not that good. I know, you know, there's a million artists better than me. I know that I could even personally do better if I spent more time on it or studied longer or whatever. And that gap has widened. While my skills have increased, my knowledge base has increased at a much faster rate, so that I feel like the best I could hope for is not being disgusted by my work. And I mean, occasionally I'm happy with a piece for a while, until then I hate it later. But the best I could hope for is to be good enough that I don't hate my work and other people like it and find it, you know, I mean, I get paid for my work, but as far as personal satisfaction is very rare, which sounds depressing, and it is a little bit, I guess. I saw a guy I'm friends with on Facebook named Daniel Spotswood is always putting up comics that I relate to, about basically just being a depressed artist. And he put up a panel of one the other day of him drawing at a drawing table, and it said something along the lines of, I mean, I must have enjoyed doing this at one point, that's why I'm doing it, right? And I feel like that's true of me to a certain extent too, that at some point doing comics was fun and effortless, and I was just doing whatever, and drawing in general, but comics specifically. And so that's, but like, it's not enjoyable in the same way anymore. Okay, actually I made this quote-unquote rough a lot tighter than I thought I was going to, so I'm going to go ahead and look at the reference for the character. Some people think it's weird to look at reference for your own stuff, but I want to keep it consistent, and I was trained as an animator, so I think that's why I'm always want to keep things on model and worry about placement and stuff. So let me just cut this guy out from the rest of the sheet here. Boop, boop, boop. Oops. Mistakes abound. There we go. So there's just him. And then back to this layer. I'm going to zoom in on the face a little bit. That's, in my opinion, the most important thing to get correct. I hate when you see somebody draw a character completely different from panel to panel, or a new artist gets on a pre-existing book like a Spider-Man or something, and their Peter Parker doesn't look remotely like the other Peter Parkers we've seen the last couple issues. And I mean everybody has their own style, but like even just dumb stuff like giving him a new haircut or changing the shade of his hair, or he has a different brand of glasses. And I mean people do change their look from time to time, but I feel like there should be a bit of a transition. Like maybe you're the new artist, draw him once or twice with that same haircut, and then he gets a new haircut to suit what you like. It's really that's really not something I need to worry about in terms of following another artist. But I guess what I'm saying is it's something I notice, and so here I am trying to worry about just matching my own style. I had a guy at a convention one time. I was there selling prints and stuff and doing sketches. I was drawing a robot, and he came by with this kid. I was like, oh, look, he draws. And, the kid, I guess, either liked art or wanted to be an artist or whatever. You get that a lot. And I was looking at, again, a reference for the same robot I had drawn. I had kind of drawn a few different sketches. Now I was just trying to do a good picture of it, like a finished sort of looking picture. And he was saying, like, oh, look, he's drawn this robot and whatever. And then he's like, what are you looking at over there? I'm like, oh, well, these are the kind of the sketches of the robot. He's like, well, yeah, but you don't need to look at that. I mean, it's your robot. You made it up. I'm like, no, I do. I mean, if I want it to look the same, I don't remember. I draw a million things, and I'm trying to get a clean, crisp, good drawing. I'm not just, doing another concept thing, so it's important for the details. And it was a weird thing where the conversation kind of degenerated, and he started off wanting me to like talk to him and his kid, and I was friendly about it, but he didn't like the answers I was giving. I guess he wanted me to be like, oh, it's all in my head, it's all magic, art's great. And I was sort of like, no, it's a process, and I've drawn it like 10 times, and here's 2 different versions I'm trying to combine, and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, this is a boring technical answer that I'm not a fan of. So, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and stop and come back because it's taking a while, and we'll just pick it up again. Okay, so I kind of got this next version of him done, and I erased the last version that matched them. He looks pretty lanky. He's a tall, lanky character, and he's a little bit in the foreground, but he seems still a little too tall, a little too thin. So this is, again, where I take advantage of the computer, and I'm going to squish him down a little bit. Just the whole thing. And that seems a little more correct already, but then I squished that, so I didn't use shift, but now I'm going to hold shift and make it bigger to keep the proportions. So I made him a little less lanky, and then brought him back up to size a little bit there. Moving him down. This line right here, if you can see it, represents the road. He's walking on the street in front of their house. That I'll probably fiddle with that scale a little bit more, but for now that's fine. So then I'm going to go over to Joey and the dog here and kind of get them up to this level of detail. And once again, I'm going to need to bring in reference. Myself, I'm going to mute that guy. I say mute, it's making it disappear with the little eye icon. Sometimes I say mute, sometimes I say... Yeah, I mean, mute just seems to work. I don't know what the visual equivalent of mute is. Let me pull over my ref again. So, there's Joey. Now, here's the problem with Joey, is he looks a little different in the other pages I've done than he does on this character sheet I made a while ago. But, so I'm kind of flip-flopping back and forth how I want him to 100% look. I mean, it's not significantly different. Probably to the casual observer, they won't even notice a difference, but I do. So let's see, boop, there's him. Make that smaller. And hold shift when I make it small. Apply. And I already had pulled the dog off for an earlier panel, so let me find that. There he is. Oof. There he is. So pull him over here. Make that smaller too. Actually, it's a girl dog, but that matters. Okay. Like this. Now I'm going to take this and put it at 50% opacity so it gets lighter, so that it kind of creates a light box effect. So when I draw over it, it's super clear what are my new lines. And now I'm not actually necessarily going for likeness right now. I put them up there in case I want, but again, I'm going more for proportion and anatomy and perspective at this point. And also, in this reference, he's wearing an outfit different than what he's wearing in this panel. which is a t-shirt as opposed to a hoodie. So I do a lot of this kind of construction to double check myself. He's sort of rough fluffing up his dog, playing with his dog. And you can see right here is an example of stuff I fixed along the way. I drew this sleeve cuff, but it doesn't really make sense unless he was like flipping his arm up that there would be this much cuff on top. Gravity, it would lay on the top of the arm and either be tight or hang a little bit below, like that. Not to say that you can't have the cuff of the sleeve going up the other way. Oh good, here's Rocky, my cat. Hi dude. He likes to get in the way. He also likes to keep me company. Here, come over here. I'm gonna pause this for a second. Alright, I moved him behind the camera. We'll see if he stays put. This guy's also wearing a backpack, but I'll worry about that in a minute. So I'm sort of trying to, the whole simple shape, block construction stuff. And now already that looks wrong to me. That's supposed to be sort of the top of the shoulder. So I'm just gonna go ahead and erase all of that. Rocky, really? Excuse me. Ah. Alright, cat dealt with. So, kind of looking down. There's the neck, there's sort of the top of the shoulders. The shoulder would connect about there. This is already looking wrong, so I erased all that crap. Drawing and redrawing, drawing and redrawing. That's what I do all the day. This is also why I try not to get too into like likenesses or specific characters until later, because it's just more to redraw when I will. Okay, so a cagey thing, and it goes down, there's the pelvis. So that looks about right. Put his leg forward, kneecap, and that part of the leg, which has a shin in it, and a foot gobes. Okay, so I've kind of done my secondary roughs on Joey and the dog. Let me get rid of this ref, short for reference. Right, I'm gonna erase the under one. Oh. I don't know if I made them smaller or what, but he once again looks too big. But I'm gonna I put them on separate layers too. I'm gonna make them bigger. Grab both layers. Put them down. Move them over a little. And I'm still gonna, let's see here. If I bring him over here, compare head sizes, they're about the same. So that makes him pretty friggin' tall. So once again, reduce his size, squish him down a little bit. Looks closer to accurate. Move him up there. Actually, I realize that's off the panel, so. But I'm getting this tangent in here, which I don't want to have. So maybe, yeah, move him up like that. Still get a tangent, but less of it, and his foot's going all off the panel, but that's not the end of the world. And it puts him a little bit closer in the foreground, so if his size is a little bit wonky. And actually, speaking of wonky size, I feel like his torso is longer than it should be, so I'm gonna grab around at the kneecaps and see if I can't just sort of stretch this bottom up to the top to fix the proportion a little. And then down. Apply. Yeah. A little bit better, maybe. I don't know. See, and this is where I go into, okay, leave it alone, it's good enough, it's not even the final one. But then I'll go ahead and grab a bright, like red, and just go back and get a 100% heavy, and then say, oops, I can't 50. And this is just like, let me use the stick figure to check things here. Of course, it looks completely wrong. That stick figure looks a little short too, though. His hips are a little wonky. So I'm not gonna mess with it right now. It's not so off. I feel the need to completely redraw it at this point. And again, this comes back to the making compromises to just get things done as opposed to get things perfect. And that doesn't mean I'm taking shortcuts or not caring about quality, but there's only so many times I can go back and work on a thing. Alright, I'm gonna... Actually, well, I guess I should... At this point, I could either do rough in the background or go in with more detail, but my goal is to get this whole page to sort of rough pencils or tight roughs, so I'm going to do the background. So I'm going to pause.
So actually, for the background,
I need to look at this panel, which I'm going to duplicate, flatten, use that one, bring my copy down as a reference. So now I can take the copy I made, bring it down here, and shrink it up.
we'll shrink it down.
Alright. So, the part of the house I'm focusing on would be sort of this area. So, select inverse, delete, the rest is irrelevant. I can bring this over here, make it big a little bit again. Big a little bit. Big. Alright. There's the dog. There's that guy. New layer. Dun, dun, dun. And so I hold shift as I make these lines to make them straight, but I forgot to adjust the opacity back to 50. Alright, so shift. So this is sort of the asphalt on the street. That's like the edge of the curb. And then let me see, where did I put those guys? Woof. Bark. And he walks down there, so the sidewalky area. Put the horizon. So the horizon line I'll put on its own layer right around here. And then test. See, I still have a lot of problems with the perspective. When I do it like accurately or seemingly correct, it doesn't look accurate, so I can end up half faking it half the time. Half faking it half the time. So, for example, this is supposed to be the sidewalk that has like little brick lines. So let's say I make the vanishing point here. Got one there, hold shift, it makes a line. One there, roughly evenly spaced. One there, and then I bring these down. Same thing over here. Actually, it doesn't look too bad, so maybe I got it right. But often I'll do that and it'll sort of look okay, and then when I try to apply the same vanishing point to other things, it won't work out quite so well because they're too close to the source or whatever. You get like a weird distortion. That looks okay though, but I unfortunately did that on the horizon line level, so I need to recreate it on this. On this level. So I'm sort of just tracing the lines I just made. Okay. Then I go back to the horizon line. Erase those green lines. That was sort of an error right there. Alright, so I have the sidewalk more or less in perspective. And then the house foundation, we'll say, is about like that. And then the door I already established in my sketch is there. But the door is actually smaller than that, and you can see I have sort of the, actually I'll move that over. In the reference you can see, maybe you can't, it's a little too far over still. There we go. It's got that sort of ornate stuff that goes around. I looked at a picture and kind of half copied a house and half made up my own, which is what I do a lot with reference. Partially so that it doesn't look exactly like what I'm drawing, what I'm looking at, and partially because it's easier. I'll just sort of take it so it looks real worldy and correct, but then I'll make adjustments based on my own aesthetic taste and or ease of drawing. So we'll call that the door frame. We'll put ornamentation. Sort of almost like TARDIS blocks if you're a Doctor Who fan. You see this a lot in doors for some reason. I did that spacing terribly. So middle-ish, a little bit higher than the middle usually is where the division is, where the handle will be and stuff. So erase that. Pull the door handle. And that one. Are you loving the sound effects? Just trying to fill dead air sometimes. I see sometimes people will sort of film it and then speed it up and then do voiceover after, which I might do eventually. I did a previous video that was me doing an entire page. It was about 20 hours from script roughs to finished color, and I sped it up to like, I don't know, 10 or 20 minutes with no narration over it though. But I think while that's interesting, and I like watching other people's stuff like that, it doesn't show you the exact process of the lines, and I can't, I mean, I guess in theory I could sort of try to recreate what I'm thinking later on, but it's a lot harder to do than in the moment. Okay, here's a perfect example of the weird perspective stuff. So like, I want to have this little step coming out from front of it, but it's so close, I think I kind of just have to make it a little bit wider, and then put another step here, a little less wide. Oh, yeah, okay, so that's fine. But it's a little slightly off center, so I guess there should be a little extra something there, but if I put it in, it's going to look wrong. So I won't. Also, a lot of this is going to be covered up by the figures in the foreground, so I don't want to get too crazy with it, although I'm probably already doing more than I need to. Now, see here, for the walkway, it seems like it'd be gigantic. If I go based on the edge of the stair I just created, it's even bigger. It's like all the way out there, which seems really big to me. Sort of there. Seems really big. So then we'll try another way, which would be to cut those stairs off, and then do a path out from the door. See, again, there's the horizon line, so it can't come out straight. If I go from the horizon line, it's going to look weird though. Yeah, see, it can't work that way. So I have to kind of fake it. So what I'm going to do is put that back. By the way, I'm sure somebody who understands perspective better than me could tell you a different way to do it than what I'm doing. I've read a book or two on perspective, and I've taken art classes and had it explained to me 100 million times, and I still have a really hard time wrapping my head around it. I think it's because it's like sort of mathy and geometry, which I have a really hard time with. So see, that's still not working. So instead, what I'm going to do is sort of aim this, and then we'll extend that, and then from here, we'll sort of aim into there, and then pick a similar spot there. Now, while I'm sure this is not correct perspective, it looks closer than the other two things I tried. And then I'll put a line there. And then I'll just, if you can see over here, you probably can't. If you can see, damn it. You can see over here, I have it segmented on the path. It's sort of like another sidewalky kind of thing. So I'll go ahead and do that. And, there's probably some formula to... In fact, I know there's a formula to... Hold on a second. Ooh, get down. I know there's a formula to get like correct spacing on things like this. Like, oh, well, if it's 1 foot, then you zigzag and whatever and do 100 lines. But I just kind of eyeball it. which again is probably not the best, and I should have went from the other direction, because then I got to the end here and it wasn't enough room to make a correct looking size. So what I'll do instead is sort of give it an edge. Actually, I don't even want to give an edge that big, just a dark line, and then say that this front brick will be about that big, and then I just get a little bit smaller with each one I go back. So it's still gonna be weird. Damn. Alright, I'll make it about that big. And that's an artifact you get a lot, that sort of diagonal line, if you don't make a clean separation when you're doing the shift tool thing to get the straight lines like that. What'll happen is if you go straight line and then hold shift first, you'll get an artifact like that when you're getting ready to do it. So you need to go straight line, pick it up, put it down, shift, move. Otherwise you get those diagonal artifacts. Alright, so again, that, hold on, Uzi, sorry, my cat, my other cat, that doesn't look 100% correct, but it's passable, and I think the average, like another artist or an art teacher or student would maybe notice some problems with that. The average person is not going to see a problem with that, and I'm kind of trying to aim for average person at this point, otherwise I'll drive myself insane. Okay, so the base of the building is going to be behind that step, and I have the building out a little bit further than the garage, which is recessed. So this is the front of the house here, and then the garage is recessed a bit. Like, all this is a few feet back. So this is a little bit more of a head-on shot than the reference I'm using. But I know I have to fit a pole and then the edge of the building. And the pole is about lined up with the stairs, so I'll give it a little bit of lead. And then go ahead and draw the pole. Posts? What do you call those things? I don't know. It's some architecture thing. And these are just guidelines so that the top matches the bottom. And then I'll go ahead and erase that garbage. And so you got a pole that's pretty evenly sized. And then I could use those same guidelines to do one on the other side, but since it's a computer, I'll just copy and paste. And once I get it lined up with this, hold shift and I can slide it over. And this one would be roughly in the same place on the other side. And then I'll go ahead and merge that down. So now it's all one layer. And then, actually, I need to erase that. And then I'll continue the building line a little bit further, and then call that the edge of the front of the house. At least the main house, not the garage. Then I'll just sort of pick probably the horizon line, although no, the horizon line is behind what I'm doing, but you can see I'm making that the garage. And so the garage probably would continue to off the page here, but I'm gonna sort of fake it and just give it a bit of an edge right there. And then the way I had it drawn before, the top of the garage door is roughly the last horizontal line on the TARDIS looking door. So I'll go about here. Again, none of this is exact, but I'm just sort of using markers. This is like almost more like figure drawing in the sense that I'm using markers on the landscape to indicate where I should put things. And it's a lot of cheapy, fakey stuff, but backgrounds stink, so what are you going to do? Actually, I don't think all backgrounds stink. I think backgrounds are important, but some people do them really well. I don't enjoy doing backgrounds, specifically perspective stuff. Houses, cars, I mean, this is nothing new. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, but I try to do them. I've resorted to tracing at times, which I'm not proud of, but if I'm under a deadline and I got to get it done, what are you going to do? Also, especially if there's not a lot of artistic interpretation. If it's literally like, there is a car in the background, while ideally I would draw that car out in perfect perspective, it's not really adding anything to the scene unless it's about, you know, Transformers or, I don't know, Knight Rider or some show where that's important, where you want to have special character given to it. But if it's just a background of a scene, I have a hard time caring that much. Especially, like, even in a scene like this, like, the important part action is here, and the house is kind of important but we've already had the house on like 3 other panels, so I don't know. It's a fine line between spending too much time on things that don't matter, and again, not to say that backgrounds don't matter, but in this scene, it doesn't matter. In this scene, I've already established where they are in the other ones, and it's just for continuity's sake. And arguably, I could even leave a background out, and I do that in some of the other panels. But if you do that too much, you start to get sort of an image 90s comic kind of effect, where it's just people fighting or talking in this green vague void. And so my crappy perspective, lazy house, possibly traced cars, I feel is the better option of the two. And obviously there's many more than those 2 options. And I don't know, this probably won't be I don't know when this video is going to go up or how I'm going to frame it, but I definitely don't want people thinking I am trying to come off as the expert, or that I'm a great artist and you should all follow what I do or listen to what I do. I'm just doing what I do and how I do it, and if you get something out of this, great. And if something I'm doing illuminates something that you're wondering about, or gives you a different idea of how to do something, that's great. But by no means am I saying these are the only way or even the correct way to do things, or that what I'm doing here is not flawed. I mean, I can see mistakes I'm making this entire time, but again, I'm saying I'm trying to get things done. So you can see that artifact right there, but it doesn't matter because I'm just roughing in some lines here. But I find process videos and blogs and things like that interesting when other people do them. So my whole, here again, I'm going to fake some perspective because I need it to, yeah. So I'm going to kind of just sort of parallel to that. So again, it sort of looks true, but it's not true. It sort of looks true. It's a weird way to say it, but yeah, if things look true or correct. I had a teacher tell me one time, if something looks correct, it's correct. If it looks wrong, it's wrong. And that's a hard thing to understand with, especially perspective and stuff. But like, I've definitely, like I said, struggled with it. And I've said, I think I did all the perspective points right, and this sort of seems right, but it still looks wrong. And he's like, well, then it's wrong. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? He's like, well, you may or may not have done something technically wrong, but if the perspective point is too close or whatever, it could be mathematically correct. But if it looks wrong, it's wrong. And similarly, if I just somehow get lucky and make something look right, well, that's not the most disciplined way to work, and it's, ideally you'd want to be able to replicate it whenever you want. But if it comes out and it looks okay somehow, well, then it's right. It's, again, something that I try to remind myself of with varying degrees of success. And all the details here I'm kind of looking at the reference to the right to make sure they're roughly in the same spot. They don't have to be perfectly exact, but again, to the average person looking at it, I don't want them to go, wait, that's a different door, or how come there's no 2 posts or whatever. No, ideally, nobody would notice the background at all, which is ridiculous considering all the work that goes into it. But it's kind of like special effects in a movie. If you notice the special effects, it's kind of a failure. If you just accept it as part of the story, then it's a success. And that's, I guess, man, I got a lot of opinions about things. As I talk, it's sort of like I'm discovering what I think about things myself, and it's weird to be just talking by myself instead of having someone to bounce it off of. And I watch and listen to a lot of podcasts and video casts of other artists, and professionals, amateur, whatever. And I put that on. Oh, good. See, I put all that detail work on this horizon line. Now that doesn't matter too much because it's just a rough, but I've also done that on finals, and that sucks. Because then you got to figure out, did I lose all the work? Can I cut around it and save it? As it is, I'm just going to leave it on that. I'm actually going to merge it with the bottom layer anyway and just have a little bit of green there. It's not going to be the end of the world, especially since I'm almost done with the sort of rough cleanup here. But yeah, I listen to a lot of things. I'm making this mainly because I like watching other people do it. I'll watch stuff like this while I work or listen to it. Sometimes looking for a specific pointer, sometimes just to see how other people work or fill the time in the background. And so even if you see mistakes I'm making, you might identify and go, oh, I gotta not make that mistake. I read a lot of books on different, artists, famous artists, comic guys or whoever, and a lot of how-to books. And I have had people be like, you've drawn for years, you're a professional artist, why are you buying like these books that normally kids get? And the reason is because you can never stop learning, and if I read a whole book and get one new idea And I don't mean inspiration sort of idea. I mean, that's great. You can get that anywhere. But I mean one, oh, here's a way I never thought about drawing feet, and that makes it a little bit easier. That's worth reading the whole book. So if you watch this and get 1 or 2 good tips, I mean, if you get more, great. But if you get one thing, I would think that's a success then, you know. And now I'm kind of just farting around for time. It does look like the mailbox would kind of maybe be right here, but I'm going to fake it because I think that's going to mess up the composition and just look weird, so I'm going to leave it out even though it would actually go there. Okay, I'm going to delete this last bit of rough. Plop. And then I'm going to put my characters back in. This gentleman. Oh, I could erase this reference. I keep saying ref. That sounds pretentious. A lot of what I'm saying sounds ridiculous, and I hear myself saying it and cringe, but I'm just trying to keep things moving here. Hey, better done than perfect, right? Okay, so where's the background? Background's that layer. Okay, so these guys are all in different layers. They're going to need a little bit more cleanup, especially the kid and the dog. And now that I have... Oh, let me check out my border there. So... Oh, this is a panel that I was going to let extend and bleed out, so the only hard cutoffs are other panels, like this one. Oops. This one. Alright, we're back in a sec. Okay, so I cleaned up the background a bit. I mean, not in terms of making it tighter, but I erased everything that was in the other panels. I erased everything that would be on the next page. These borders, you can see I extended it out because this is going to be bleed to the edge panel. So this line here is the edge of the paper. This line here is the edge of the safety zone. So actually, I don't even, you know, I could even erase all this. So this is, if you want it to bleed to the edge of the paper, you have to draw to the end. And it's probably going to be cut somewhere in the middle here, but you have to continue it out. And actually, I need to continue it out to the bottom of this as well, but this is mostly going to be in the coloring because this is just pavement that he's walking on. And then this will all be pavement here. And then I may or may not put a little bit of, you know, sidewalk or whatever. I probably won't. I'll probably sort of let this panel cut it, and that'll be the end. What I'm going to do now is, I have this background panel. I'll erase that for a second. These guys, I need to make these two match a little bit. So I'm going to put the dog behind the kid, and then make him 50% transparent, and erase all the parts of the dog that'll be behind the kid, like the kid's leg here, and his hand. And then back to 100. And then actually the kid's arm, I didn't really draw in very well. So put that there, that's the other arm. Give a little bit more of this torso thickness. And then similarly, I'm going to erase the foot of the kid that's behind this guy. Then I'll go ahead and merge these 3 layers. Merge layers. And then I'll make a layer under it. Pick a color other than white. Switch to pencil. Oops. And underneath, I'll just do a quick glob like this. You want to do pencil because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this in with a bucket tool, and if you use brush, you get a weird line. Again, it doesn't really matter in this stage, but it's just out of habit for coloring. At least the flats, you always want to use the pencil tool. Otherwise, you get weird edges and whites and not correct, whatever, you get it. So this is super boring. Kind of unnecessary too. I guess the thing is, what I want to not have the background be showing behind them is what I'm trying to achieve. And the easiest way to do that would be to erase those parts of the background, but I am, not OCD is the right word, but nervous that I'm going to need that background, and I don't want to have to, like, if I decide to move them later, I'd have to redraw all the parts of the background that I erased, and while it probably would only take a few minutes, I've revised stuff for myself and for clients enough that I tend to take the path of least resistance for if I need revisions later. So I either save time now or potential future, and while it's only a potential future that I might not need to save time, the little bit of time I'm putting in now, if I do need to revise, it'll save me much more time than I'm putting in right now. So there's that. Okay, and that's good enough. And then I'll just go ahead and fill it in white. Boom, say super easy. Then when I put the background, oops, you can't see him. I mean, you can't see the background through them. Stop, Rocky. Okay, so now back to their layer. The next thing I would do then is clean them up a little bit more. The background's good as far as being rough pencils or tight layout. Yeah, rough pencils or tight layouts. Now this face I need to clean up because it's not really on model. Also, don't remember, this is important, what he's saying or what the emotion there is. Put it to 50%. What I'm going to quick do is I keep a copy of the script in this file on the other page. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, panel 5, so go down to panel 5. I was given this script as a whole story, and I've been breaking it down to pages and panels, depending on the writer you work with, or if you're working on your own stuff, it might be different. I am working on a script for someone else right now, for a book that he created and wrote that I'm just doing the art for, called Kid Switch. So, panel 5, cut to exterior of Joey's house. Where I do that. Joey's friend Monty, that's this gentleman, walks up beside him and says, "Come on, man, we're going to miss the bus." So, Joey, whose face I'm about to work on, is not actually saying anything. The panel before it, however, he was talking to his dog and saying, "Hey, you know, I'm happy. Somebody's having a good day," and kind of petting the dog, looking happy. So, if anything, he would either be happy or kind of neutral. He wouldn't be sad or angry or anything like that. So, what I'm probably going to try to do is have him look... This is going to sound... What I'm going to try to do, and will not pull off at all, is have him look like he was just a second ago smiling, and now is sort of turning, like, almost bemused at his friend, like, "Hey, good dog." What? Now that I will not pull off. But I know that at least my starting point should be a smile, but I don't want it to be a huge smile because he's getting distracted. Oh, also I should check the eye line. Yeah, that seems about right. He's like, "Hey, what's up?" Alright, so, didn't pull out my, oops, am I on the right one? Yeah. I didn't pull out my reference for this guy, because I've drawn him a few times, and I feel like I kind of fake what he looks like at this point. The hair is the thing that I think keeps changing the most, because it goes back between being very messy and a little bit messy, which, in the first couple pages I could probably get away with, because he's outside, and he was asleep in bed, and whatever, but, yeah, see how it's... Is that different than... Well, it's much different than the character sheet one, but like I said, that's already kind of changed. A lot of this is going to get decided in the inks, which I know sounds weird because I'm doing digital, but inks is what I consider the final phase. If you notice, I end up taking cats down like 100 times. I have an area next to my desk where they could hang out in, which right now the camera is sort of occupying that space. Looks like he has a really huge chin right there. So, I do kind of like that mouth shape though. So what I'm going to do is grab all this, move it down so his chin doesn't look so big. And it sort of lines up-ish. A little bit of a bridge of a nose jam. Maybe have the mouth a little bit open, like he had just been going good dog. Well, not literally like a dog, but something like that. Yeah, that's not bad. And sometimes I'll like put a chin thing in like that, but I think right here it's not going to work as much. Although, maybe just that one little line like that. Yeah, there you go. Same thing with the divot on the nose, but again, right here I don't think I want it. And then the eyes, got the eye line. It goes across. Again, measurements with me, like with bodies or faces, I sort of know them all, but then I forget and kind of fuck them up and change them like, from what should be correct, kind of like with perspective. But sort of the eyebrow, I believe, is supposed to go to the top of the ear, which puts the eyeball a little bit lower, and then supposedly the corner of the mouth goes to the center of the eye, which could kind of work on this one, but if I do it on this one, it makes him kind of fish-eyed, because there should only be about one eye length between the eyes. Part of the problem is I tend to draw a little bit cartoony, so if I follow these rules too strictly, then it comes out weird. Like, I guess the problem is that this mouth is wider or longer than a human mouth should be, I'm assuming. So it should be like here, if it lined up with the eye. But I like that mouth, so I'm not going to change it. And I'll just sort of ignore the fact that it doesn't match up with the eye and just sort of say one eye length there, and then put the eyes where they look about right. Yeah, I do a lot of wrong things with questionable results. So once again, this is sort of his cheeks, to kind of, he's looking up a little bit happy maybe. He's supposed to have sort of thick eyebrows I believe we decided he is half Spanish. His mom is Hispanic. I don't remember if we got completely into exactly where she's from or not, or maybe I just forget. And his dad's white, so he, or I should say Caucasian, European. I don't know. I'm bad with this stuff. But anyway, the point is that he is not super pale and has dark hair and dark, thicker eyebrows to sort of illustrate that heritage a bit. And again, that comes in with color a little bit too. When I have 4 or 5 quote-unquote white characters, I try to not make them all be the same exact beige. Again, if it's a deadline or something, or if it's super cartoony, doesn't matter, but he is a darker shade of beige than his pal over here, who's going to look more pale, like an Irish guy or something like that. And I'm using sort of stereotypes of coloring, so I apologize if I'm offending people, but I'm just trying to illustrate what I mean, where on a surface level, the hue of the skin could be generalized as being the same, but even two people of the same exact heritage and ethnicity might not have the same skin tone because they've been out in the sun or just random genetics or whatever, and this is not so I don't know if I made that point clearly or not. It's also hard to draw and talk sometimes. Actually, it's not hard to draw and talk. It's hard to talk intelligently and draw, because I do caricatures at birthday parties and stuff sometimes, and theme parks, and I talk all the time, but it's just, shooting the breeze kind of, oh, what do you do? Oh, that's interesting. Where did I go to school? Well, I went to New York, but also, so it's questions I've answered 100 times and not really a lot of thought, whereas here, not only am I trying to make lucid points that are interesting, but a lot of these things I have not articulated myself ever or in a very long time. All right, so let's see. Cut this part of the rough out. Done. Rocky, get down. All right, let's back up here. Now that head looks a little bit big, especially the neck, so I'm just going to chop off the neck first. Sometimes you get in so close to the details and then you can't see, the proportions and things. That looks a little bit off, so I'm going to move it down and over. And it still looks big compared to this guy. So I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. Oops. That looks a little bit better. Still maybe a little bit big, but I'll leave it for now. Okay, and this little white background now does not fit him, so retool that. And then turn it back white. Background, and then make this back 100%. Which means I need to erase more of this. Okay, it's not. Man, his head still looks a little bit big, but I'm not going to mess with it now. Get rid of that rough guy. Okay, so now we have that, and I'm going to unmute all the other panels. Oh, little piece I forgot to erase over here. Reference that I had used on one of those other panels for the dog, and also for this panel with the dog. Oops. You can see I had a few different dog references, but none of them were the breed of dog I was using, so I was just going for kind of a general pose. That one looks pretty close, but 1 and then 6. Actually, it's funny that these are all black. Usually when I do roughs and stuff, it's more like this panel, the blue and the red, for whatever reason. Just to make it easier to know that it's not final, but also, like, since it's so sketchy, the reds and the blues separate very well. Gotta make that disappear. Nope. There we go. So now, save it. So now what I have here, this page would be considered pencils for me that I'm doing myself. If I was giving it to somebody else, I'd have to do some more work on it. But this is rough pencils or tight roughs. And from here, I'll go on and do my digital inks, or I could print it out and do inks on Bristol and color, etc., etc., etc. It's been taking me in the neighborhood of 20 hours to do a page from script to full colors. I haven't really timed myself just the roughs or just the inks or whatever. I should probably do that. But anyway, this is sort of one panel going from super roughs to kind of rough pencils. And I cut a few times, but you can see it took me a while. I'm pretty slow. It's something I'm working on. Again, the balance between getting it done and getting it done right. But hopefully you enjoyed this. If you learned something, even better. And happy draw face.